I still see my mother's face in that moment. Not the version I grew up with, the one who tucked me in at night or made pancakes on Sunday mornings, but the one I saw through the narrow gap between airplane seats. Row 3, first class. Her head thrown back in laughter, a champagne flute catching the overhead light, her fingers interlaced with my stepfather's as the flight attendant leaned in to ask if they needed anything else. I was in row 37. Middle seat. My knees pressed against the seat in front of me. A screaming toddler 2 rows back. My name is Sutton. Sutton Iris Calloway. 23 years old at the time. Fresh out of college with a communications degree that felt more like expensive wall decoration than an actual career path. I was working at a call center in Denver, taking abuse from strangers for $11 an hour, living in a studio apartment where the heating only worked half the time and my neighbor's music came through the walls like he was performing in my kitchen. I had asked my mom 3 months earlier if I could come home for a week. Just a week. I hadn't seen her in almost 2 years. She'd moved to Scottsdale after marrying Gerald, a real estate developer with perfect teeth and a voice that always sounded like he was selling something. And I'd been stuck in Colorado trying to make ends meet on a salary that barely covered Raymond and rent. Mom said no over the phone. Her voice had this practiced sadness to it. She said things were tight right now. Gerald's business was going through a rough patch. They were cutting back on everything. She actually used the word broke. We're basically broke right now, honey. I wish I could help, but we just can't afford it. I remember sitting on my apartment floor after that call. The linoleum was cold. I'd been crying, but I didn't realize it until I saw the wet spots on my jeans. I felt so stupid for even asking. So childish for wanting to see my own mother. I told myself she was struggling too. That she didn't owe me anything. That I was an adult now and needed to figure things out on my own. 3 months later, my company sent me to a conference in Phoenix. They paid for the flight coach, obviously, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I could surprise her. Swing by Scottsdale for an afternoon. See her house. Meet her for coffee. Something. I didn't tell her I was coming. I wanted it to be a surprise. The universe had other plans. I boarded that flight at 5:30 in the morning, exhausted, carrying a laptop bag that cut into my shoulder and wearing the same blazer I'd worn to 4 interviews the year before. I shuffled down the aisle looking for 37B, and that's when I saw them. My mother and Gerald. First class. Row 3 left side. She was wearing this silk blouse I'd never seen before. Cream-colored, expensive-looking. Her hair was freshly highlighted. Gerald had his arm around her headrest, and they were laughing at something on his phone. There were 2 glasses in front of them. Champagne. Not the cheap stuff either. The flight attendant was hovering nearby with a smile that said these people tip well. I froze in the aisle. Someone behind me bumped into my bag and muttered something under their breath. My hands started shaking. My throat closed up. I wanted to say something. Scream. Demand an explanation. But all that came out was this pathetic exhale that no one heard over the engine noise and the shuffle of passengers cramming luggage into overhead bins. She didn't see me. Never even looked up. I kept walking. Found my seat. Sat down between a man who smelled like onions and a college kid with headphones blasting music so loud I could hear every word. I stared at the seat in front of me for the entire flight. 4 hours. Didn't move. Didn't eat the stale pretzels they handed out. Didn't cry, even though I wanted to. I just sat there replaying her words in my head. We're basically broke right now, honey. That's when I knew. My mother hadn't just lied to me. She'd looked me in the eye, well, through a phone, and chosen her new life over me. Chose champagne at 30,000 feet over seeing her only daughter. Chose first class over the truth. And I decided right there, in row 37, with my knees aching and my heart splitting open, that I wasn't going to let this go. Not ever. I need to back up a little so you understand who I was before all this happened. Before the plane. Before the rage. Before I became someone I barely recognize when I look in the mirror now. My childhood was normal enough. Small house in Aurora, a suburb outside Denver. Dad left when I was 7. I don't have many memories of him except the smell of motor oil and the sound of his truck starting up at 4 in the morning for work. Then, one day the truck didn't come back. Mom never talked about it. She just worked double shifts at the hospital as a nursing assistant and made sure I had what I needed. She wasn't warm exactly. Not the type to sit and do crafts or have long heart-to-hearts. But she was there. She showed up to my school plays even when she was dead on her feet. She taught me to balance a checkbook when I was 12. She told me education was the only thing that could give me a better life than hers. I believed her. So I worked. Scholarships paid for most of college, but I still graduated with $32,000 in debt. I studied communications because I thought it sounded versatile. Useful. Turned out it was code for "we'll hire you but pay you nothing." The call center job was supposed to be temporary. Just until I found something real. 6 months turned into a year. A year turned into almost 2. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that should have been condemned. The elevator worked maybe half the time. My front door stuck in the frame so you had to shoulder it open. The bathroom tiles were cracked, and the grout was stained yellow, no matter how much bleach I used. My mattress sat directly on the floor, because I couldn't afford a bed frame. I had 1 plate, 1 bowl, 2 forks, and a mug I'd stolen from a college dining hall. But I had a routine. I went to work. I answered calls from angry customers who screamed at me about billing errors I didn't cause. I smiled through it because they monitored our tone. I ate lunch alone in my car, because the break room felt too depressing. After work I'd go to the gym that cost $19 a month. I'd run on the treadmill until my legs felt like they might give out. Then I'd go home. Eat something microwavable. Watch whatever was free on streaming, sleep. Repeat. The only thing I was proud of, the only thing that felt like mine, was my ability to solve problems. I'd always been good at it. In school, I was the kid who figured out how to hack the cafeteria vending machine to give extra snacks. In college, I helped friends write appeals to get grades changed or fees waived. I could see systems, see the cracks, find the pressure points. At the call center, I became the person everyone came to when a customer issue seemed impossible. I could navigate the database faster than anyone. I knew which supervisors would approve refunds and which ones needed their ego stroked first. I got promoted to senior representative after 8 months. It came with an extra $50 an hour and absolutely no respect. But it was something. I had one friend, Lennox. We'd met during training and bonded over how much we hated the fluorescent lighting and the motivational posters in the break room. She was 26, covered in tattoos, and studying to be a paralegal at night. She was tough in a way I wasn't. Direct. She didn't take anyone's garbage. We'd meet at this dive bar called the Ninth Inning every Friday. $2 beers and wings that were 70% grease. We'd sit in the same booth and complain about work and men and debt and everything else. She was the only person I told about my mom. About the phone call. About how it felt like I didn't matter anymore. Lennox had looked at me that night and said, "Your mom's full of it." You know that, right? I didn't know that. Not yet. If you're watching this, go ahead and hit subscribe. I need you to stick around for what comes next. It gets worse before it gets better. The week after I saw my mom on that plane, I couldn't function. I called in sick 2 days in a row. I told my supervisor I had food poisoning. Really, I just lay on my mattress, staring at the ceiling trying to make sense of what I'd seen. I kept replaying it. Her laughing, the champagne. Gerald's arm draped over her like she was some prize he'd won. The blouse that probably cost more than my rent. I wanted to call her, confront her, demand an explanation. But I didn't. I was afraid. Afraid she'd have some reasonable explanation that would make me feel stupid. Afraid she'd get angry and cut me off completely. Afraid that if I pushed, I'd lose the only parent I had left. So I said nothing. I went back to work. Pretended everything was fine. But the cracks started showing. There was this customer. I remember him clearly. He called in furious because his bill was $60 higher than expected. I pulled up his account and saw he'd added a premium channel package the month before. I explained this to him calmly. Showed him the date he authorized it. He didn't care. He started yelling. Called me an idiot. Said I was trying to scam him. Normally I could handle this. Normally I'd apologize, offer a one-time credit, get him off the phone. But that day I snapped. I told him the charge was valid. I told him he could cancel the package himself online if he didn't want it anymore. I told him I wasn't going to remove a legitimate charge just because he didn't read the terms. He asked for my supervisor. I transferred him. 10 minutes later my supervisor called me into her office. Monica, 40-something, always wearing pencil skirts and too much perfume. She had this fake, sweet voice that made everything sound condescending. She told me the customer complained. Said I was rude. Unhelpful. I tried to explain. Told her I followed protocol. Told her the charge was legitimate. She didn't care. She said my tone was unacceptable. That I needed to be more empathetic. That customers are always right even when they're wrong. She wrote me up. First formal warning. Said if it happened again I'd be suspended. I walked out of that office feeling like I'd been slapped. The next crack came a week later. I'd been saving for months to get my car fixed. The check engine light had been on for half a year. I finally had enough to take it to a mechanic. He told me it needed a new catalytic converter. $1,800. I didn't have $1,800. I asked if there was a cheaper option. He said I could drive it as is, but I'd fail emissions, and eventually the car would die completely. I paid for the diagnostic and left. The check engine light glowed on my dashboard the whole way home like it was mocking me. I thought about calling my mom, asking for help. Then I remembered the champagne. I didn't call. The third crack was smaller but somehow worse. My landlord raised the rent. $50 a month. It didn't sound like much, but it was $50 I didn't have. I asked if there was any way to keep it the same. He laughed. Actually laughed. Told me if I didn't like it I could leave. There were plenty of people who'd take the unit. I signed the new lease. That night I sat on my floor and calculated my budget. After rent, utilities, car insurance, minimum payments on my student loans, and food, I had about $73 left each month. $73 for gas, toiletries, anything unexpected. I felt the walls closing in. I thought about my mom in first class. Thought about her telling me they were broke. Thought about how easy the lie had come out of her mouth. Something hardened inside me. I didn't plan to reach out to my mom. I was doing everything I could to pretend the plain thing never happened. But then my birthday came around. September 14th, I turned 24 in my apartment with a grocery store cupcake and a text from Lennox that said, "Happy birthday, loser. Let's get drunk tomorrow." No call from my mom. No text. Nothing. I waited all day. Checked my phone every 10 minutes like some pathetic kid waiting for validation. By 9 at night I gave up. I opened a bottle of cheap wine I'd been saving and drank half of it on my floor. I pulled up her Facebook page. I know I shouldn't have. I knew it would hurt. But I did it anyway. She'd posted that morning. A photo of her and Gerald at some resort. Palm trees in the background. Infinity pool. Her in a white sundress holding a tropical drink with an umbrella in it. The caption said, "Blessed beyond measure. Grateful for this beautiful life." 43 likes. A dozen comments. Friends saying things like "you deserve it" and "living your best life." I stared at that photo until my vision blurred. She forgot my birthday. Or worse. She remembered and just didn't care. I don't know what possessed me, but I sent her a message. I kept it simple. Casual. Just said, "Hey mom. Haven't heard from you in a while. Hope you're doing okay. Miss you." She responded 6 hours later, "Hi sweetie. Sorry, been so busy. Things are crazy right now. We'll call you soon. Love you." She didn't mention my birthday. Didn't ask how I was. Just a generic brush off with a heart emoji at the end. I wanted to scream. Instead I went to work the next day and smiled through my shift like nothing was wrong. But something was building. A pressure I couldn't name. It finally exploded 2 weeks later. I was scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break. I didn't follow my mom on there, but I checked her profile sometimes. I know, pathetic, she'd posted a video, her and Gerald at a charity gala. Some black tie event in Scottsdale. She was in a floor-length gown. Emerald green. Hair done professionally. Diamonds at her neck that caught the light every time she moved. Gerald in a tuxedo looking smug. The video was someone else's post, but she was tagged. The caption said something about raising money for children's literacy. I felt sick. I clicked on Gerald's profile. I'd only looked at it once before. Boring corporate photos mostly. But this time I scrolled back. Way back, I found a photo from 2 months before my mom told me they were broke. Gerald standing in front of a brand new Tesla, keys in hand, huge grin, caption treated myself. Fair work hard play hard. I kept scrolling, a post from 4 months earlier. My mom and Gerald in Napa Valley. Wine tasting, fancy dinner. My mom's caption anniversary getaway with my love. Another post, them in Cabo, beach, sunset, matching robes. Another. Front row seats at a Suns game. Another. Designer shopping bags from Scottsdale Fashion Square. I went back a full year. There was no rough patch. No struggling business. No cutting back. Just champagne, vacations. New cars. Luxury, all while my mom told me they were broke. I sat in my car in the call center parking lot shaking so hard I thought I might throw up. She lied. Not a small lie. Not a white lie to avoid hurting my feelings. A calculated lie. A lie designed to keep me at a distance, to avoid spending money on me, to make me feel guilty for even asking. I called Lennox. She answered on the second ring. I told her everything. The plane. The posts. The Tesla. The gala. My voice cracked halfway through, but I didn't cry. I was too angry to cry. Lennox was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Sutton, your mom is a selfish piece of garbage. Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real. I asked her what I should do. She said make her regret it. I didn't know what that meant yet. But the words stuck. The next 2 weeks were the darkest I'd ever experienced. I stopped sleeping more than a few hours a night. I'd lie in bed replaying every interaction I'd ever had with my mom. Every time she said she was proud of me. Every time she hugged me. Every time she said she loved me. Were any of those real? Or was I just convenient until I wasn't? I stopped eating properly. Lost 7 pounds I didn't have to lose. My supervisor noticed. Asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was fine. I wasn't fine. I started making mistakes at work. Small ones at first. Forgetting to notate accounts. Transferring calls to the wrong department. Then bigger ones. I accidentally refunded a customer $800 instead of $80. Monica called me into her office again. This time she didn't write me up. She just looked at me with this mix of pity and annoyance and said I needed to get it together. I nodded. Said I would. I didn't know how. Lennox dragged me out to the 9th inning one night. She bought me wings and beer and let me talk. I told her I felt like I was disappearing. Like nothing I did mattered. Like I was just this disposable thing people used and forgot about. She listened. Didn't try to fix it. Just listened. Then she said, You know what your problem is? I shook my head. You think you need her approval. You think if you're good enough, quiet enough, understanding enough, she'll suddenly wake up and realize you matter. But she won't. People like her don't change. They just get better at justifying their garbage. I wanted to argue. Defend my mom. But I couldn't. Lennox leaned forward. You're smart, Sutton. Smarter than anyone at that call center. Smarter than your mom. You can figure out how to make this right. I asked her what she meant. She shrugged. I don't know. But you're good at solving problems. Treat this like a problem. That stuck with me. I went home that night and sat on my floor with my laptop. I started going through my mom's social media. Gerald's too. I made notes, timelines, posts, tags, locations. I didn't know what I was looking for yet, but I was looking. I thought about something my mom used to tell me when I was a kid. She'd say, people show you who they are, Sutton. You just have to pay attention. She was right. And she'd shown me exactly who she was. The idea didn't come all at once. It started small. A seed planted by Lennox's words that grew slowly in the back of my mind. I kept digging through Gerald's social media. At first, I was just torturing myself, looking at their perfect life, their expensive dinners, their trips. But then I started noticing patterns. Gerald posted constantly, always humble bragging, always tagging locations, always mentioning his business. He ran a real estate development company called Summit Ridge Properties. According to his LinkedIn, he specialized in luxury residential projects, condos, townhomes, upscale communities. He posted about deals constantly. New properties acquired, developments breaking ground, partnerships formed. He had this whole persona: self-made entrepreneur, philanthropy, giving back to the community. I started Googling him. His company had a website. Glossy, professional, photos of modern buildings and happy families. Testimonials from satisfied buyers. I clicked through projects. Found the ones currently under development. 3 active sites. All in the Phoenix area. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just kept digging. Then I found something weird. One of the developments, a luxury townhome community called Desert Sky Estates, had been delayed. The website said it was still in progress, but when I looked up the address on Google Maps, the lot was empty. Just dirt and construction equipment that looked like it hadn't moved in months. I checked the county records. Public information. Anyone could access it. The permits for Desert Sky Estates had been filed 2 years ago, but there was no certificate of occupancy. No record of completion. I checked the other 2 developments. Same thing. Permits filed. No completion records. I didn't know much about real estate, but I knew that was strange. I started looking at reviews. Found a forum where people talked about Phoenix area developers. Someone had posted about Summit Ridge Properties. Said they'd put a deposit down on a townhome at Desert Sky Estates 3 years ago. Still waiting. Company kept pushing back the move-in date. Wouldn't refund the deposit. Another person replied. Same experience. Different development. Another. Same story. I felt something click. I spent the next week researching. I created a fake email account and reached out to people who'd posted complaints. Pretended I was a journalist writing a story about real estate fraud. 5 people responded. They all had similar stories. Put down deposits, anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. Got promises of luxury homes. Got delays, excuses, runarounds. Some had been waiting 4 years. One woman sent me copies of her contracts. I read through them. The language was slippery. Lots of clauses about unforeseen delays and market conditions. Nothing that explicitly promised a completion date. Legal but shady. I started mapping it out. Gerald's company had taken deposits from at least 30 families based on what I could find online. Probably more. At an average of $30,000 per deposit. That was nearly $1 million sitting in his accounts. Money that should have gone into construction. Money that was supposed to build homes. But the homes weren't getting built. I dug deeper into county records. Found liens against Summit Ridge Properties. Unpaid contractor fees. Disputes with suppliers. The company was bleeding money. But Gerald was still posting about his Tesla, his vacations, his charity galas. The money wasn't going into the business. It was going into his lifestyle, and my mother was living off it. That's when I knew. I couldn't just confront her. Couldn't just cut her off and move on. That wouldn't fix anything. She'd go right on living her perfect lie. Gerald would keep scamming people. They'd keep posting their fake, blessed life online. No. I needed to burn it down. I started planning. Real planning. Not just angry fantasies but actual steps. The first thing I did was compile everything I had. Screenshots, county records, forum posts, emails from the people I'd contacted. I organized it into folders, made timelines. Cross-referenced dates. I realized I needed more. Hard evidence. Something that couldn't be dismissed. I reached out to more people. Found a Facebook group for Desert Sky Estates buyers. Joined under my fake name. Posted that I was considering buying into the development and wanted to hear from current investors. 12 people messaged me privately. All with nightmare stories. One couple had sold their previous home to afford the deposit. They'd been living with family for 2 years, waiting for their townhome to be ready. Gerald kept telling them it was just a few more months. Another man had emails from Gerald promising completion by spring of 2023. Then summer. Then fall. Now it was late 2025 and nothing. I asked if anyone had tried legal action. A few had. But Gerald's contracts were airtight. The delays were technically allowed under the terms. The lawyers they'd consulted said it would cost more to sue than they'd likely recover. So people just waited. Hoped. Sent angry emails that went unanswered. I felt a rage I'd never experienced before. These people weren't rich. They were normal families who'd scraped together deposits because Gerald promised them something better. And he was stealing from them the same way he'd stolen from me. Just in a different form, I decided to contact a real journalist. Someone who could actually break the story. I found a reporter at the Arizona Republic who'd written about real estate fraud before. Sent her an email with a summary and some of my evidence. She responded 3 days later. Said it was interesting, but she'd need more. Specifically, she'd need someone willing to go on record. Victims willing to be named. I went back to the people I'd contacted. Asked if they'd be willing to talk to a reporter. Most said no. They were afraid of retaliation. Afraid Gerald would pull out completely, and they'd lose their deposits forever. One woman said yes, her name was Trish. She'd lost her husband the year before, and put his life insurance payout into the Desert Sky deposit, because Gerald told her it was a safe investment. She had nothing left to lose. I connected her with the reporter. Then I waited. Weeks went by. The reporter said she was investigating, but these things took time. I started to doubt myself. Maybe this wouldn't work. Maybe Gerald was too slippery. Maybe nothing I did would matter. Then I made a mistake. I got drunk one night and texted my mom. I didn't mean to. I just wanted her to acknowledge me. To admit she'd lied. I wrote, "I know you and Gerald aren't broke. I saw you on the plane. I've seen the posts. Why did you lie to me?" I sent it before I could stop myself. She responded the next morning. "Sutton, I don't know what you're talking about. We've had some good months recently, but things were really hard for a while. I'm sorry if you misunderstood. I love you." Misunderstood. Like I was some confused child who couldn't read a calendar or count backward from a Tesla purchase. I didn't respond. But I knew I'd tipped my hand. She knew I was watching. She'd be more careful now. Lennox told me I was an idiot. She was right. I needed to be smarter. The article came out on a Tuesday in November. I was at work when Lennox texted me a link. I opened it in the bathroom stall so no one would see my reaction. The headline read, "Scottsdale developer accused of stalling luxury projects while living lavishly." My hands shook as I read. The reporter had done her job. She interviewed Trish and 2 other buyers who'd agreed to go on record at the last minute. She'd pulled the same county records I had. She'd reached out to Gerald for comment. He declined, and included a statement from his lawyer saying all delays were due to supply chain issues and regulatory red tape. But the article didn't buy it. It included photos. The empty lots, the rusted construction equipment. A side-by-side comparison of Gerald's Instagram posts, the Tesla, the vacations. With the dates his company had filed for permit extensions, the implication was clear. Gerald was living off investor money while his projects rotted. The article ended with a quote from Trish: "We trusted him. He looked us in the eye and promised us a home. Now I don't know if I'll ever see that money again." I read it 3 times. Then I sent it to my mom. No message. Just the link. She didn't respond. The article started making rounds. Local news picked it up. A Phoenix TV station reached out to Trish for an interview. She did it. Her story aired that Friday. By the weekend, Summit Ridge Properties had dozens of 1-star reviews online. People were commenting on Gerald's Instagram posts, calling him a scam artist. Demanding refunds. He deleted the comments. Then he made his account private. My mom's account went private too. I felt a surge of satisfaction. But it wasn't enough. The article had damaged Gerald's reputation, but it hadn't destroyed him. He was still operating, still had the money, still had my mom by his side. I needed more. I started looking into the financial side. Gerald's company was an LLC. That meant limited liability. Even if people sued, they'd go after the company, not him personally. But LLCs had to file annual reports. Public documents. I requested them from the Arizona Corporation Commission. When they arrived, I combed through every line. Gerald was the sole managing member. But there was something interesting buried in the disclosures. Summit Ridge Properties had taken out a line of credit from a regional bank. $2 million. Secured against future development revenue. But the projects weren't generating revenue. They weren't finished. That meant Gerald was likely in default. I didn't know much about banking, but I knew defaults were serious. I also knew banks didn't like bad press. I sent the article to the bank's corporate office. Anonymously. Along with a summary of the county records showing the stalled projects. I didn't know if it would do anything. But I wanted them to know. 3 weeks later, I got a tip from one of the buyers I'd stayed in touch with. Gerald had sent out an email to all investors. It said Summit Ridge Properties was suspending operations indefinitely due to unforeseen financial challenges. He offered partial refunds, 25 cents on the dollar, to anyone who signed a release waiving their right to sue. People were furious. The local news covered it. More interviews. More angry families. Gerald's lawyer released a statement blaming the economy and increased regulation. But I knew the truth. The bank had called the loan. Gerald was scrambling, and for the first time, he was actually scared. I smiled. The final blow came from somewhere I didn't expect. One of the contractors Gerald had stiffed, a guy named Ron who ran a concrete company, reached out to me through the Facebook group. He'd seen my posts and figured out I was gathering information. He said he had something I'd want to see. We met at a coffee shop in Mesa. Ron was in his 50s, weathered, tired. He brought a manila folder stuffed with documents, invoices, emails, contracts. He told me Gerald owed him $120,000 for work done on Desert Sky Estates 2 years ago. He'd filed a lion, but Gerald kept dodging. Kept promising payment was coming. Then Ron showed me something else. An email chain between Gerald and another developer. They were discussing a shell company, moving money between accounts to avoid creditors. Gerald had written, "We just need to keep things off the books until the heat dies down." It was dated 6 months ago. I asked Ron if I could make copies. He said, "Take the originals. I'm done with this guy." I took the folder straight to the reporter at the Arizona Republic. She called me 2 days later. Said this was enough for a follow-up story. Possible fraud charges. She was reaching out to the county attorney's office. The second article dropped in early December. This one was worse for Gerald. It included the emails. It outlined the shell company. It quoted Ron and 2 other contractors who'd been stiffed. It also mentioned that the Maricopa County Attorney's Office had opened an investigation into Summit Ridge Properties for potential fraud and misappropriation of investor funds. The story went viral. Not nationally, but locally it was everywhere. Phoenix residents were furious. The idea that some rich developer was scamming working families while living in luxury hit a nerve. Gerald's lawyer released another statement. Denied wrongdoing. Said the emails were taken out of context. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Within a week, 3 families filed a class action lawsuit against Summit Ridge Properties and Gerald personally. They argued he'd committed fraud by misrepresenting the timelines and misusing investor funds. The bank foreclosed on the line of credit. Seized the company's assets. The empty lots. The equipment. Everything. Gerald shut down Summit Ridge Properties completely. And then, 2 weeks before Christmas, I got a call from Lennox. She'd been following everything. She said, "Check your mom's Facebook." I pulled it up. My mom had posted for the first time in a month a photo of her sitting alone at a kitchen table. No makeup. Hair pulled back. She looked tired, older. The caption said, "Sometimes life humbles you in ways you never expect. Grateful for the people who truly care." No mention of Gerald. No champagne. No designer clothes. I checked Gerald's profile. Still private. But I searched his name on Google. There was a new article. A small one. Local Business Journal. It said Gerald Fournier, formerly of Summit Ridge Properties, had filed for personal bankruptcy. I sat back in my chair and exhaled. It was done, not the way I'd imagined. No dramatic confrontation, no courtroom speech. Just a slow, methodical dismantling. A man who'd built his life on lies, watching it collapse piece by piece. And my mom, who'd chosen him over me, sitting in the ruins. I didn't hear from my mom for 3 months. I thought maybe I never would. Part of me was fine with that. But in March, she called. I almost didn't answer. Let it ring 4 times before I finally picked up. Her voice was small, quiet. She said, "Sutton, can we talk?" I didn't say anything. She asked if I'd seen the news. About Gerald, I said I had. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said I didn't know. About the business. About the people he hurt. I swear I didn't know. I wanted to believe her. Part of me still wanted to believe she was just naive. Just a victim like everyone else. But I'd seen the posts. The vacations. The gala. She'd known enough. I asked her why she lied to me about being broke. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice cracked. She said I was embarrassed. You were struggling and I was living this life I didn't earn. I thought if I kept you at a distance, you wouldn't resent me. I laughed. It came out harsh. I said, so you lied to protect yourself. She started crying. I didn't comfort her. I just waited. She said Gerald was gone. Moved back east somewhere. Left her with nothing. The house was rented. The car was leased. Everything was in his name. She said she was staying with a friend. Looking for work. She said she was sorry. That she understood if I hated her. That she didn't expect forgiveness. I told her I didn't hate her. I told her I just didn't know who she was anymore. We hung up. I haven't spoken to her since. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. For now, I'm okay with the distance. I quit the call center in January. Took a job at a small marketing firm. It doesn't pay much more, but the work is better. I have my own desk. Windows. People treat me like I'm capable. I moved to a new apartment. Nothing fancy. But the heat works. The door doesn't stick. I bought a bed frame. Lennox and I still go to the 9th inning on Fridays. We don't talk about my mom anymore. We just talk about life. Normal things. I still think about what happened. About Gerald. About the families who lost money. About whether what I did was right. I don't regret it. But I don't celebrate it either. It's just something I carry now. There's this thing that happens after you burn someone's life down. You expect to feel triumphant. Victorious. Like some hero in a movie walking away from an explosion. But it's not like that. You just feel quiet. I think about my mom sometimes. Wonder if she's okay. Wonder if she thinks about me. I think about Gerald. Whether he rebuilt somewhere else. Whether he learned anything. Mostly I think about the version of myself I was before all this. The girl who believed her mom when she said things were hard. The girl who thought love meant taking people at their word. I'm not that girl anymore. I don't know if that's good or bad. It just is. I still solve problems. Still see systems and cracks and pressure points. But now I know that skill cuts both ways. You can use it to help people. Or you can use it to tear everything down. The choice is yours. I made mine, and I'd make it again. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm curious where this story reaches. Because the truth is, we all have people who've betrayed us, lied to us, made us feel small, and maybe some of you are wondering if it's worth it to fight back. I can't answer that for you. All I can say is this: some people will show you exactly who they are. And when they do, believe them. Then decide what you're going to do about it.